welcome back to another episode of the Tinah Talks podcast. Today I am joined by a guest and we are talking about all things women's health and hormones. So today I'm joined by the founder and CEO of the House of Hormones, Leah, and she has a background in psychology and is also a massive advocate for women's health. Leah is on a mission to bridge the gap between understanding women's hormonal health, which ties in really nicely with the work that we're doing at Tinah, because obviously women's hormones are so closely linked to mental health. So I want to introduce you to Leah. If you want to give us a little bit of an overview of yourself, your business, and everything that's going on for you right now.
Hello, and thanks so much for having me, Sophie. I'm really excited to be here on Tinah Talks.
Thanks for joining us.
I just love what you guys are doing. Obviously, mental health is massively important, obviously, but it's always been a massively important thing in my life, and we'll go into that a little bit more, even with my early days of studying psychology. And I then went on to study more in children's mental health when I had kids. And now, of course, women's health and women's mental health, and mental health is tied in so much so with hormonal health and things like that. So I'm really excited to dig in more, but thanks so much for having me.
No, thank you for joining us. And exactly what you just said, the more that I learn about hormones and women's health, the more I see the direct correlation between mental health, personally for myself and in other people. But I just can't understand how we're not more better educated on this from a younger age. It actually blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah, it is pretty mind-blowing. And to be honest, this is the reason why I launched the House of Hormones. So, I mean, I know you're interested to hear about why we launched the House of Hormones. I think that's actually a really nice little crossover. I had, like we said, I studied psychology. It's a hugely interesting topic and has always been of interest to me. Throughout my life, I've had friends, I've had family, myself have struggled with anxiety. Loads of people I know have struggled with depression. And so I find it, when I had children, I find it so important to further my studies. And so I did some diplomas, etc., on children's mental health. And just really that wasn't with any work in mind. That was just to understand and to help my children grow up in such a difficult society. I think, in this day and age, which I know you guys dig into a lot, but just the pressures of society and the different things that we're actually dealing with and the things that we're going to see our children dealing with in different generations is mind-blowing. And I kind of wanted a helping hand in understanding that, so I can then give them a helping hand. But what I seen after I had my son, so I was maybe around 35, I started to see something that was happening constantly with every single one of my friends that was a similar age. So, and I didn't really understand it at first. So it could be mental health, it could be fatigue, it could be just loads of different symptoms. And we were all going to the doctors and saying, oh, I'm just so tired, or my anxiety's just crept right up, or this has happened and this has happened. And it was all from the age of 35. And then the more research that I started doing into this, because what was fascinating was me and so everyone has a girls group chat, right? So and a boys group chat similarly, or a mixed group chat, but everyone has like that one group chat that you go to for advice or whatever. And so all three of us, so three girls, all went to the doctors with the exact same symptoms, complaints, whatever you want to call them. And we all came out with three different things. So somebody was offered B12 injections, somebody was offered the coil, and somebody was offered antidepressants, right? Fascinating to me, absolutely fascinating. Now, needless to say, I am not, by the way, here's my disclaimer, in no way, shape or form am I against antidepressants, okay? For the right times and the right people, very important. So there's my disclaimer, and I am pro in the right situation. However, in this case, it was antidepressants were not needed, okay, because it was a cyclical thing and it was quite clearly hormones. So I started to really delve into this education because it was blowing my mind. At the same time as doing that, we're seeing women's health products on the rise. So you're starting to see things like collagen and supplementation, all these different products, like you must be using this, and are you using this? So at the same time that I'm really delving into women's health education and what's going on there, and why do the doctors not know about any of this, and why are we being offered antidepressants when we're just talking about a period of the month when our mental health isn't, and the doctors aren't able to tell us anything about that, but they will happily give us antidepressants. So this was where all my education started to come together. So I started working and interviewing different doctors. There are some amazing doctors out there at the moment doing amazing things. Dr. Nagata Reef, who is UK based, she's amazing. She's like, the TV doctor of the moment. She's on This Morning, and she's just doing great things. Dr. Aziza Sese, oh my goodness, she does amazing things. And then you've got people more stateside like Dr. Mary Claire Haver, who I just love, and she is doing fantastic things. And I started listening to these doctors and having meetings with these doctors and speaking and hearing to what they were saying. And they have been treating women. So they're not listening to the guidelines anymore. They're going off their experiences of treating women for over 25 years. And so things just started to become more evident. And what I was realizing was women couldn't trust their doctors, or were feeling gaslit by their doctors and couldn't go to their doctors anymore. So they were going to their group chats. So they're going to their group chats and going, well, how are you feeling? Well, are you taking a supplement? Have you been told you need to take, have you got B12 injections? Are you taking zinc? Like literally, it was all coming back to community and group chat. And so that is why I launched the House of Hormones, because I realized that there is nowhere to go where you can get up-to-date education that isn't, because an NHS website obviously has to be like, things have to be tried, tested. And here's the problem: they have not done the tests on women's bodies. The research does not exist. So we are no closer to understanding even women's bodies. So they don't know. All medications that are out there have been tested on men's bodies. So the medication that you're even taking, even if it's for something like, heart medication, or that's just been tested on men's bodies. So we actually don't know how well that works on women's bodies. And so there's a huge, huge gap in the system. It's really letting women down. And I just decided that I wanted to do something about it. So I put together, all the research that I've been doing, and I put it all into the House of Hormones. And I also thought, let's add some fun to this too, because women do love products. We do. And also, although we are a nutrition first, mental health first, all of this, everything that we do educates on nutrition, exercise, mental health, all of these practices. But if you then need to top up with a supplement or whatever, we want women to be able to trust the brands that they're using, because of course women, because this society is broken and we can't get help that way, women are turning to products. And of course people are going to start jumping on that bandwagon. So that what's going to come with loads of amazing products, right, and loads of really good research that's being done, of course there's going to come loads of rubbish too. So we like to try and test and work with some brands, and we are not paid by these brands that are promoted on our website, by the way. I need to be clear, they are hand-picked, and the ones that we love we'll put on our website. So the idea is that you can trust that we're not trying to sell the brand. We don't have our own products. We're not trying to sell anybody products. We're just trying to say, if you then want to top up, like if you're still struggling sleeping and you want to take some magnesium, hey, look, here's some brands that we like. It's that type of vibe. And I know you guys do a similar thing, which I just think is amazing and super helpful. And yeah, we just want women to know that they can come to the House of Hormones and it is a place that they can trust, and you can trust the information. But as well, if you go to our Instagram, we kind of like to do it with a more relaxed vibe. We're not here to be saying, oh, women have had it so hard, this is outrageous. All of that's true, but it can be a bit more lighthearted, and we do want to help educate younger women. And so we just do feel like, we can take the piss out of ourselves a little bit. Yes, I am a psycho a week, a month, the week before my period. Like, that's okay. And I just think women love like we love that humor in it as well. And I think when we also engage men in that conversation, and I want to dig into that a little bit later too, but when we bring them in, like they can have it, like if they're not scared to like say you're a psycho or but if we can bring them into the conversation, it's better for everyone, right? We're gonna make more progress. Like this is, and also they're not as clueless as you think. When you actually open up having a conversation with men about it, or you drag them into it and ask them for their thoughts, it's actually a really nice conversation. And that's what it's been like in my experience. But yeah, I hope that explains a little bit about the House of Hormones and why we launched,
Yeah.
and what the problems have been in society.
Definitely, thank you for that. It's so relatable, honestly. That whole story that you've just told about, like, you and two of your friends, like, all going to the doctors for the exact same symptoms, all coming out with a different diagnosis, all coming out with a different supposed solution for the problem, and then having to go on your own investigation. Like, I 100% have gone down that route so many times for different issues that I've struggled with, and the response is just textbook. Like, no one's actually looking into my personal situation or like my personal health. It's literally just like, let's tick a box. Oh yeah, we've done this, we've done that, we've done that. And I'm not trying to dig out the healthcare system in any way, but my personal experiences, in all honesty, haven't been particularly positive. And I've had like multiple issues, not necessarily just with hormones, although I definitely have got issues with unbalanced hormones, but other things, like, for example, a few years ago, I was actually under investigation for lupus because I had all of these like unexplained symptoms. So I was referred to, what do they call it? I can't remember the department in the hospital now. It's so long ago, but I was referred to the whatever the department is, and I was under their observation for 2.5 years, and I was under these, like, going through all of these like crazy tests, and they just could never get to the bottom of it, and I was like being gaslit by all sorts of different people telling me that there was nothing wrong with me, and I was like, well, these symptoms are present, like there's something happening. Anyway, fast forward 3 years, I'm living in Bali and I meet this girl who's got exactly the same symptoms as me, and she starts telling me it's all from like hers was all from like histamine imbalances in your
I've
your
heard,
body can't produce the histamine. So for the past like 3 years, I have completely changed my diet, because previously I'd say I had like a very high histamine diet. Like, I'd eat bananas all the time. I'd always eat avocados. Like, they are very high in histamine.
Who would know
I've
that,
cut those out.
right? Who would know? And your doctor certainly doesn't know that.
The doctor 100% never mentioned any of this. Anyway, I start like reducing all of these foods that I think that I'm intolerant to, based on the research that I've then gone down a rabbit hole into online to try and figure out if that's actually what's causing all of these symptoms for me. 90% of the symptoms that I had completely gone. And that's just from my own personal investigations, because I haven't been able to get that. Like, the doctors would never have even warranted a conversation with that. Same when I was struggling with my mental health. The first thing, rather than me like going down a route of therapy or like whatever else, straight away, do you want we'll put you on antidepressants. I'm like, there wasn't even a conversation. It was literally just like, here you go, here's some like really high drugs. So yeah, I completely understand like the situation where you want to fight for like something that you know is wrong, but you're not getting their answers. Then you go on your own investigation. So that's why I think the House of Hormones is absolutely perfect place for somebody that does think that they are struggling with hormones to come and educate themselves, as you say, get recommendations for products that may be able to support them, very similarly to what we're trying to do with Tinah from a mental health perspective as well. So I think it's great what you're doing, and thanks so much for coming on, joining me and talking about this, because it's such a big subject and it's such a, as I said at the beginning, a subject that we are not taught enough about from an early age as women, and we then have to go on in later on in our life, maybe almost go through like a trial and error process of struggling with things to then
I think you're right, Sophie.
figure out what's wrong.
Well, I think you're right. And just to quickly talk about, your instance there. And I mean, this is exactly what we're seeing with women everywhere. So you were talking about your personal experience of having to go back and forth and feeling gaslit and feeling like the doctors weren't believing your symptoms. And so this is what we're seeing. We see this a lot with hormonal balance, even around perimenopause, which we'll go on to talk about, but also even in things like, I mean, I was chatting to a young girl the other day about her hormonal acne and how she was being given antibiotics, and arguably sometimes that can actually make it worse, and it's ruining your gut, and it's just having so many negative effects. And you touched on a point that I think we'll probably mention this a few times, and this is not kind of what you said earlier, but this is not to dig out the doctors, the GPs, or the NHS. Absolutely not. It's a systematic problem in general. So the doctors actually do less than 2 hours of education on hormones, unless you're a specialist women's health doctor. And that's just pretty shocking. So, sometimes people, I have obviously now gone on to do diplomas in hormonal health, and I'm a menopause coach. And so I've got lots of, but even before that, I'd done more research than a doctor and knew more than a doctor. And I was asking the doctors questions that they just couldn't answer. And you hit the nail on the head when you said that the doctor didn't ask you about nutrition. I mean, of course, normally a doctor is meant to say, are you having a balanced diet? But they literally wouldn't be able to go in and start talking to you about micronutrients and all these different things and your microbiome and all these different things that we now know are so important for mental health, for physical health, for everything. And so again, I've gone on to do education in nutrition, because as soon as I realized how important this was, it was one of the first things that I went to. But it's crazy, and we're just seeing this over and over again. And this is why I started the House of Hormones, but this is also why we need to get the message out to as many women and everybody in general. Honestly, you have to advocate for yourself, because if you are not educating yourself, and if you are not trying to find the answers of what's going on, unfortunately the system is not going to help you at the minute. And that's not to be negative or to make anyone feel depressed about it. There is stuff you can do. We are doing we always say, we're doing the hard work so you don't have to. We're trying to bring the education here for you. We're trying to find you the best products. We're trying to find you the things that can be done. It's not always about buying products and things like that, but just what small changes can you make, like walking. Don't get me started on the benefits of going for a walk, and we'll talk about that again later. But yeah, and so it's just so important to get the word out there. So thanks for having me on, because we just want to reach as many women as possible so they can advocate for themselves, their daughters, their mothers, their friends, their partners.
No, definitely. It's like you said, it's shocking. Like, as you just mentioned, like the level of education that is actually given around hormones, and then the result that then has on the care that we're given as women. So we've been speaking a lot about hormones. It'd be really good, just before we kick off into further conversations around it, when we're talking about hormones, what specifically are we talking about, particularly those hormones that are related more so to mental health and what's impacting our mental health? Can you talk us a little bit more through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this actually goes unrecognized, but it's pretty obvious. So our hormones, and we can get into the breakdown of these, but mainly when I'm referring to hormones in terms of hormonal balance in females, we're talking about estrogen, progesterone, and also testosterone, which people don't really consider that to be something to do with women's health, but it is massively. And so when these hormones, these three hormones, are fluctuating or are out of balance or out of sync, then basically we start to see huge differences in women's moods, in anxiety, in depression, in just how they're feeling overall and their mental health. And when you think about it, when you take it back to basics, of course, it's so obvious. We all know the week before your period or during your period that you feel a bit more down. It's kind of like, it goes like saying everybody knows that and it's accepted, but it's not really talked about. This, again, going back to why I launched the House of Hormones. I have a daughter. My daughter's 7 years old, and I actually got my period when I was 9. And so realistically speaking, my daughter's 2 years off, because you are meant to, naturally follow kind of, your mother's journey, hormonal journey. And so if she gets her period when she's 9, me, I want to be in a better place to be able to educate her, because this is something that is kind of widely accepted, that yes, there's mood fluctuations, but let's dig down deeper into that and what that means, and actually how people can be feeling, because it can be really dark or really sad, and it's not just you're a bit grumpy, which is kind of how we've allowed it to be passed off for years. And it's really sad that actually, and there's so many great companies now that are doing fantastic marketing campaigns, like it's not just a period, and you know, all these types of things, just to get women's health and also the hormonal, the cyclical journey that we go on every single month, to get it to be taken more seriously. But these fluctuations do cause, you know, huge effects on our mental health, and that is, when you look at it, like that is happens on a monthly basis to every single woman. So this is over 50% of the population. I think it's actually 51% of the population. But also the journey from the start of your hormonal journey at age 9, or you know, whatever, 10, 11, 12, whatever age that's going to be, right up to, you know, when you go through menopause and then post-menopause. So we can look at it like that as well, and the impact that it'll have. But definitely, you know, there's lots of things that aren't spoken about too, like PMDD, that so many women suffer from, and that's a really serious condition that really leads to such, can lead to depression and such severe anxiety. But you know, there's just so much I could speak about when it comes to mental health, but it's easier for me to sometimes maybe give my personal experience, because when, honestly, Sophie, like even earlier when I opened up to you and I'm speaking to you about hormonal balance and I'm speaking to you about all these different things, and you're like, and yeah, and then my experience, every single woman does this. So every single woman that I'm speaking to, once you're talking about this topic for 10 minutes, and anyone that's watching this, I know they've already said, oh yeah, well that correlates with me, or that happened to me, or, you know, like every woman has some form of experience, whether it's hormonal acne, and it's not an age thing. I know we do at the House of Hormones talk a lot about perimenopause, and I'll explain a little bit more why. But honestly, we're about the hormonal balance of every age. And like I said, my daughter's 7, and I think it's so important to really start teaching this at a younger age and really talking about the mental health side of it, because I just think, you know, it can have such psychological damage on people, and women have had to internalize this for so many years and have been painted as moody. And please don't get me wrong, because like I said, I do find it funny to say, oh, I'm such a psycho this week, or you know, whatever. And I do love the memes of, you know, like my husband's breathing annoying me, like woman, like I like them. I just think it's lighthearted, it's fun. But also, as long as we're taking serious the education that's behind it, because let's face it, women have been forced to internalize this, or have been sent to their group chats to discuss this. I think it's really interesting as well to quickly point out that I grew up in Belfast. I grew up with 3 brothers, so I am an only girl, and I grew up in a household where you would hide your sanitary towels up your sleeve to go from, and like that's such a sad, and like I didn't grow up in a household where I was made to feel ashamed, or like it wasn't anything like that at all. It was just the norm. My brothers nor my dad would ever have spoken to me about my period, or would ever have you know, and that was just normal. It wasn't because they were horrible, or because like that wasn't the case at all. But that's crazy. So the biggest part of a woman's biology, and you're a young girl going through, you know, this change, and you're hiding and you're ashamed of it, and you're maybe, and imagine then dealing with those mental health issues that come along that week before, and you know, it just can be so challenging. And to not be there to be supporting our younger women, that's just, it's crazy to me, you know. And I think in this day and age, when we know so much more about mental health and we know so much more about these things, it's crazy that women aren't given the support that they need. There's so many other aspects to it, like, for example, hormonal acne. So we know that so many people suffer from hormonal acne, and it won't be diagnosed as hormonal acne. It was just diagnosed as acne in many cases. And that's something physical, like potentially on your face or on your back, and as we know, the psychological damage and, you know, the mental health issues that can come out, or how it can make you feel if something is, you know, physically impacting you, it also mentally impacts you so much. And I just think these things aren't addressed. Again, doctors will maybe say, here's some antibiotics, and there's no discussion of your mental health and how that's actually impacting you. And that's happening for a lot of young girls. And I just think we're in 2024. It needs to stop. Like, it just needs to end. We have to understand, it's a really simple concept to understand, that with fluctuations of the hormones that I mentioned before, so estrogen, progesterone, and we'll dig into these a little bit more, and testosterone, when they fluctuate, whether that's on your monthly cycle or whether that's on your whole hormonal journey, so from when you get your period to post that, then that is completely directly correlated to mental health, and it needs to be taken more seriously. I think as a mother with a 7-year-old daughter who's coming into this world, I feel really like we have to change things now. Like, I almost want to make the biggest amount of change that I possibly can in the next 2 years before she enters this kind of world of hormones and that type of thing.
I totally understand that, and it's amazing to see like your passion coming through as you speak about it, and the fact that it's all mainly fueled by your daughter, and that she's going to go through this so soon. And actually, just as you were talking there, it made me think, like, what did I know at that age? And the answer is zero. Like, zero.
Yeah.
I knew nothing. I knew how to put a sanitary pad in my knickers. I knew how to use tampons,
Yeah.
but like, that was it. I knew nothing about the fact that my moods directly correlated to this thing that was happening to me every single month. I just knew it was going to come every month. And then as I got all throughout my teenage years, I was a chaos of emotion throughout my teenage years, and I didn't understand why. And if I had understood why, if I had had that education that you're going to then give on to your daughter, like, I may have reacted differently. Like, that education has the opportunity to change her whole adolescence, her adult life. Like, it really does have an opportunity to change the whole course of her life, because she's going to understand herself better, which I think is an amazing thing.
And that's just one side of it. So yeah, my passion to educate and to make the world a better place for her, and that might sound a little bit cheesy, but it's true. But also my passion for, like, I turned 40 this year, and for the last 5 years, I've just been witnessing every single woman who's my age around me from the age of 35. And so this is moving kind of into perimenopause. So to talk a little bit about perimenopause, starting to have all these different symptoms, right? And these are symptoms that can be explained away, right? So, like, let's dig into a few symptoms that you wouldn't even know. Tinnitus. Let's talk, and we'll talk about me. So we'll talk about my case study, so people can, because some people will say, well, that's not a symptom of perimenopause. It is. There's 80 symptoms that have been noted so far. We have them listed, so you can, if you go to the House of Hormones website, so thehouseofhormones.com, we've got a free download section. You can go and download loads of our visuals. We try and simplify things and make them in a really nice way. They're also on our Instagram. We have listed these. So let's go through a few of them that I got from the age of 35. So not all at once, right? And just to say, doctors and the system basically would not consider anybody or think about anybody even being perimenopausal until the age of 45 plus. Right? Whereas this was happening to every single woman I knew from 35. So firstly, anxiety. I put that down to, I just had a baby. So I was like, oh, I got a bit of postnatal depression. Could have been that as well, right? But here is how, as women, we explain everything away. Exhaustion. Like, I don't mean tired, I mean chronic fatigue, right? Like, tired. And oh, I've got 2 children. Of course I'm tired. Of course I'm tired. There's my explanation for that. Bearing in mind, I'm surrounded by women that are having all the same symptoms, and they're explaining away, oh, but I was out at the weekend, so I've been really tired this week, and and I've got 2 kids, or I'm working really hard. Because of course, we're all in this generation, we're mostly working full time, plus we have kids, plus we're doing the mental load of the household and XYZ. And this is, again, not to dig out men or not to, but this is just what's happened in society, and women have just taken on more and more and more. And so then we're explaining away all these symptoms, and we're not really digging into what the problem is. Tinnitus. Have you heard of tinnitus before?
I know what tinnitus is. Yeah, I did not know it was
So
perimenopause.
that was one of my first symptoms, and I was like, that is weird, I've never had this before in my life. Itchy skin. I used to have eczema when I was a kid, so I was like, oh, maybe I'm just getting a bit of eczema again, or again, you know, I just had 2 children, maybe my body's just changing, maybe I'm using a different moisturizer. You will explain away nearly every single symptom. It is crazy. Brain fog, right? Brain fog was one of my biggest symptoms that I started having, that actually was one of the ones that made me delve deeper. Like, there is an explanation for every single one of these symptoms. So because nobody knows that this is normal, because we're told that this is 45, firstly, 35-year-olds are just walking around thinking, couldn't possibly be, won't even say the word, are scared of talking about perimenopause or menopause or anything like that, because that feels like it's for like women that are way older, and it couldn't possibly be for us. However, if women knew what to look out for, if they understood what they could do to advocate for themselves, like, I cannot tell you the changes that I've made that are not only making my life better and making me healthier and making my whole family's life better, and also kind of slowing down, you know, the onset, not slowing down the onset of perimenopause, but just slowing down everything becoming really overwhelming. And so if I could just tell you, by doing some simple things, it's life changing. And not only is it making it better right now, but it's also making me healthier and stronger for when I fully go into, you know, for when these symptoms become increasing. So essentially, the way I seen it was the system was set up to basically make women completely desperate and just have, you almost needed to have 50 of those symptoms before a doctor would listen to you. So you had to say, you start at 35, and I then had tinnitus, and I was having a bit of anxiety, and I was a bit tired, and I was explaining them off, and then 2 years later I had more symptoms, and then, you know what, I've got to wait until I'm 45 and I'm literally having hot flashes and I can't sleep at night, and I'm having all the real obvious symptoms because I've ignored everything else, and it's all building up. Of course my mental health would be completely shot by then, because you're going to the doctor and they're saying couldn't possibly be perimenopause because you're not 45.
Yeah.
So I mean, now it's been proven by so many doctors. 2 weeks ago they actually brought the age down of where they would offer women HRT. They've brought it down from 45 to 40. It needs to be brought down more, but at least it's a start. So let's not be negative, but at least it's a start, and they've brought it down to 40. So now, like now I'm 45, now I'm 40, I would be considered, you know, would you want to have HRT, blah, blah, blah. Before, they would not even offer it to me. They wouldn't consider anything. They'll say, before they offer you HRT, which is a whole different podcast and debate, because we could go on for ages on that, but they would offer antidepressants before they would offer women. And the way I view HRT, everyone has different views on it and they're entitled to them. However, all the links to cancers and the research that people were worried about, that's all been proven incorrect now through many studies and spoken about at length. And I can send people studies and discuss it with anybody that wants to ask more questions on that, but that's a minefield, so we won't get too into that. But the point is, you know, the system was set up to make women like completely desperate and really low, really at cracking point, as opposed to help women and teach them how to advocate for themselves. And there's some really simple things, like really simple things, and it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money, and it doesn't have to be the newest supplement that's out there and this and that. And I mean, obviously nutrition's my first thing, and you've talked about that yourself for your own health issues that have gone on and how that made such a huge difference to you. And I think if we could just get it across to women, the difference that it would make for their mental health, their physical health, like everything, and the small changes, and it doesn't have to cost loads more money, and it doesn't, and I get it, it's really overwhelming on Instagram. It is. You just go, you need to have this amount of protein and you need to have this amount. And you're like, oh my God, I literally need to give up my full-time job just so I can try and eat enough protein in the day. But like, if you just change certain things, honestly, it can make such a big difference. Strength training is another one. If you're not strength training, I don't know what you're doing, because we just talk about muscle mass, and when we start talking about like the depletion of estrogen, and we start seeing things like that going down, like honestly, you're just lose muscles. Here, like Dr. Mary Claire really explains this well, and she talks about like, you think of like the old woman that's in an armchair that can't get up, like that's because of this, right? So you've even got to, when you're thinking about yourself, you know, and your hormones starting to change at a certain age, like around perimenopause, you've really got to start thinking about your older self. Like, do it for your older self too, not just for yourself today. Do it for your older self too, because you need to protect yourself. And I think that's the really important thing. Like, again, we won't delve too much into HRT, but people have been looking at HRT almost like it's a medication, and really I think we need to change the way we look at that. So I now kind of see HRT like a supplement. So if you think of any other hormone that depletes in men, like men get theirs topped up like this. It's crazy in America, by the way, because men get testosterone through their insurance, because obviously they have a different healthcare setup, whereas women do not. So it's just the way it's been set up for women is so crazy. But when estrogen starts to go down, which starts to go down at the age of 25, so when that starts happening, basically, why not top it up? So kind of, I've started looking at hormone replacement therapy as, you know, to think of it as it's doing what it says on the tin. It's just replacing the hormones or the you're losing. So by keeping them balanced, it just means that your mental health's not going to be all higgledy-piggledy. It probably still is a little bit, but you know, in your normal cycle, but not as bad. There's graphs online, and we've put graphs online where you literally see, you know, this is like women's hormones, and then around perimenopause it's literally like this. So you know, it's just crazy. And I think the education, we just need to educate people more, because if they could understand by doing simple things, by adding protein, adding fiber, by getting out and walking, like exercise, and walking is just the best thing for your mental health. Like, I swear by it. I cannot get through my day without going for a walk. And I know people just think, oh, well, I'm too busy for it, or I can't do it. Well, maybe if you're walking to the train station, or like I drop my kids off from school and I force myself to do a half an hour walk, and whether I need to fit in calls or whatever it is, I do whatever I can, because it's non-negotiable for me now. And I think to advocate for yourself, you just have to make some things non-negotiable, and that is one thing that's non-negotiable.
Yeah, I really like what you said there about like thinking about your future self, because you know that person that you are today, like yeah, you're going to benefit yourself as you are, but actually you're also benefiting yourself in the longer term as well. And like you gave the example of like a frail woman like sitting in a chair not being able to move, like do you want that for yourself, or do you want like better for that? Do you want to still be living and being active and going out and doing all those things? Like that starts now. That doesn't start when you're 85. That's going to start when you're younger. And you spoke a lot about like different ages where different things happen. Could you summarize that and talk me through like a bit of a timeline of what should we be looking out for at different ages? So for example, I'm 32, turning 33 next year. Like what should I be thinking about at this stage, like where you're saying, you know, 35 potentially, like perimenopause could start setting in? Like what should I be looking out for at this point, and like where does that journey kind of go from there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would start by saying, and I've thought about this a lot because, again, my daughter, back to that, and I've just kind of thought, you know, how should we be teaching people about this? I think a lot about this, right? Like, what way should we go about it? What have we done wrong? Why don't women today know these things? Like, why don't you know the answer to that question? Is my question. And I speak to so many different people, and honestly, Sophie, I speak to people in this industry, like selling women's health supplements, right? Or working for apps, you know, cycle tracking apps. And I'll ask them, can you name the 4 stages of your cycle? Nobody can name them. No, honestly, I've asked people. And of course, like if you're a doctor or whatever, yeah, you'll be able to name them. But like even people working in this cannot. So like your luteal, menstruation, follicular, ovulation, that's the four, right? And if we can even get that down, right, and just understand, and of course now there's lovely tracking apps and there's all this different type of stuff. But where I would start for every single woman is symptom tracking. We have a free downloadable symptom tracker, which is the equivalent to what the NHS use. And, you know, everyone's got them. I don't even care if you get it from the House of Hormones, but have a symptom tracker. We also have a beautiful journal if you want like a wellness journal and you want to track it that way and you want to write things down, or maybe you're on a fertility journey, or maybe, you know, you just haven't been feeling yourself or whatever. So if you really wanted to go more into it, you could do that. And again, use any journal. I don't care. Obviously, we've got one, but use whatever one you want. But for you, I'd be saying, like, you know, your early phase, just be educated in the fact that, firstly, this isn't scary. It doesn't have to be the big, like, crazy thing that everyone makes it out to be, or the really, like, impending doom of, no, like, getting older is actually amazing. And I've always loved getting older. And all of my friends will tell you this, because there's so much wisdom. You actually are a lot happier and settled in yourself, I find. But there are little things that you could be doing for yourself. So, you know, for a young 30-year-old, you know, you would say, look, just, you know, like start good habits early. Like make sure you're looking after yourself, but make sure you're in tune with yourself. Make sure you're in tune with your symptoms. Make sure you know when something's wrong. Make sure you know what the symptoms are. So if you're feeling a bit down, or if you're all of a sudden really tired, you're not just explaining it away and allowing yourself to be gaslit, because you start going into a halt. Do you know what I mean? And I think luckily for me, I have a background in psychology, mental health, and all those types of things. So I was able to see that, wait a second, this isn't right. This isn't what we're being told. Like, and I'm really interested in psychology. You know, I didn't just do it because that was what, like, I love it. It's a passion. So I really wanted to look into this more, and I was really inquisitive about the whole thing. So I was able to look into it more and go, this is weird that all this is happening to everybody. But if you're aware of that, like if I tell you these 80 symptoms, and then all of a sudden when you're 34, you get tinnitus, and you're going to go, I remember Leah saying, actually, and it doesn't mean that you need to be like, oh my goodness, I'm perimenopausal, that's it, I'm going to get hot flashes and I'm never going to be able to sleep again. Absolutely not. But the point is, you'll know that your body, you need to then advocate for yourself more. So your body's starting to change. Think about it this way. Women have naturally learned in your cycle, so in your monthly cycle, you have naturally learned to, and we don't do it enough, but you've naturally learned to, if you have your period, you're told to have a little hot water bottle and a bar of chocolate, right? And like self-care, just self-care is the message. And I think we're all okay with doing that a little bit. We don't do it enough, but I think the general message is we can do that. That's kind of the same message for getting older. And that's what I want to get home to people. Like, think of it like that. When you start getting a few little signs, think of it as like, time to start putting a little bit more into X, Y, and Z. Time to start, I can't keep my diet the same way it was in my 20s. You know, I'm not gonna go out and binge drink on a Friday and then eat burgers and no one's saying don't have fun. No one's saying don't do these things, but we're just saying be aware of what's happening to your body, advocate for yourself, and put good routines in there for yourself and good, you know, self-care systems in place for yourself. I now know I need to walk. And I'm not, when I say like I do strength training and things like that, I'm not a gym goer. So for me to start doing things like this, it genuinely makes my friends laugh so much. But I just see it as non-negotiable now, because I know what's happening to my body. And nobody, without sounding like impending doom and without trying to scare anyone, you don't have a choice, but it doesn't have to be bad. Like, look at women like Jennifer Aniston, and do you know what I mean? Like, there's women that are getting older and you're like, you're getting younger. And it's not because they're having work done, or it's because their nutrition, they're working out, they're doing these things. And you just do have to change. And I know women that have children, trust me, like I have 2 kids. I get it. It's busy. Where is the time? Trust me, I get it. But there are things you can change, and you can change your diet 100%.
I mean, I used to work with a supplements brand, and over the past, I'd say probably since 2021-ish, 2022, is where really I started to understand more about hormones, my cycle, nutrition, and like I said, going through that like histamine intolerance situation, I had to understand some of these things because they are all still ultimately linked. I didn't really look at that until I came off the pill. So it's really interesting that you say, like, you know, the first kind of thing would be to track all of your moods and track all of the symptoms that you're experiencing. Because when I was on the pill, I was on the mini pill, so I actually didn't have a period for about 6 years. Like, it was not good. In now I look back at that, but that for me was just normal. But I didn't think anything of it because obviously you're just put on the pill as like a late teenager, and you just don't think about it ever again. But I was on it, and then I came off 2.5 years ago now. The symptoms that I had for the first like year were wild. I was all over the place. My hormones were completely unbalanced. I was all over the place. But then I was tracking them, and that's the only thing that I felt like I could control. To be able to then be like, right, what do I need to do? Because I know at this stage of the month, for example, I'm going to experience X. Like, how can I help myself through that situation? Going back to what you said about like self-care, like looking after ourselves, incorporating different routines and habits into our life, like doing the strength training, figuring out like what we're going to eat that's going to help these things. But I think, as you say, it all comes just down to education. Like, until you, like, don't wait until you've got the symptoms. Like, try and educate yourself as much as possible earlier on, because I think that that's only going to help you. As we were talking about, like, as I go through my 30s and maybe as I start having some of these symptoms, I'm going to understand them way better if they start coming up. So I think that side of things is amazing, and what you're doing is amazing because it is helping with that education piece. I guess once you understand the symptoms, and you were mentioning earlier, you know, when you hit 35, you had all of these symptoms, but you were justifying them with other things that were happening in your life. How do we determine whether it is, you know, our lifestyle that's causing some of these symptoms, or if it is our hormones? Like, how do we make that differentiation? Because I think they are so closely linked. Like, what are the telltale signs that it is?
And this really gets tricky, because if you go to, annoyingly, here's another thing, but if you go to the doctors and you have a blood test, right? So they might say, great, let's check your estrogen levels, or you know, and so you'll do a blood test. Here's the thing. To try and get an accurate blood test is near impossible. You do just have to advocate for yourself. Like, if you came and spoke to me, Sophia, and you said to me, I am just not feeling myself, I had tinnitus, I'm feeling really down, and I just can't sleep, I'm really tired. This is the beauty of some of the things, because they're like catch-22. I'm so tired. And then I go to bed and I just can't sleep. Or I go to bed and I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning every single night, right? And I hear that loads. And I would say, okay, cool, let's put you on this diet. This is what I want you to eat for the next 2 weeks. And we have a 28-day reset, hormone reset, on our website, by the way. So if anybody wants that, please come and get that from us. And I would say to you, right, let's look at your diet. Let's do, you know, a 28-day reset. But also, I want you to be walking every day. I want you to go for a strength training class. I want you to be kind to yourself. Let's look at your cycle. So on our Instagram and on our Pinterest, we have these like cycle charts, and I love them because we've tried to make them fun. And it's like what you should eat in your cycle. So in your luteal phase, you should eat this, and or what exercise you should be doing. So you maybe shouldn't be doing like huge cardio the week before your period, and I think, you know, then we could start looking and going, well, have you noticed, you know, a pickup? You know, I think the moods and how you feel, something happens and you're almost able to stand outside of yourself. And I know people talk about this a lot, people that have had depression or anxiety, and it is really interesting. I find this so interesting. But at some point, when you understand it and when you know it's to do with your hormones, because you can feel that day, like that day of ovulation, like you can feel a whole hormonal shift within your body. And so once you start symptom tracking and you really start advocating for yourself and really thinking about yourself in this way, honestly, I can't describe it, but you just can feel it, to the point where everyone's heard this, right? But you know what it's like as a woman. Sometimes you don't know your periods come, but you know your periods come, right? And it might not be because you've had a pain or you felt something. It's just like, you just know. And women, everyone I've said that to goes, yeah, I know what you mean. And so it's kind of that, like, once you've started symptom tracking, and by symptom tracking, I literally mean just write down today, like, you know, what's your symptoms? How are you feeling? What do you mean? Have you got pains? Have you got, you know, you feeling down? You know, have you, is your period really heavy? Like, what is it? You know, let's talk. Did you sleep last night? Did you not? Have you got brain fog? How are you getting on in work? You know, can you concentrate? Can you not? All of these different things. Are you snapping? Are you snapping? Who are you snapping at? What's happening here? You know, this type of thing. And I think, you know when there's an increase in that. So for perimenopause, you know, a lot of the time it'll be like new symptoms that you've never had. I never had tinnitus. I never had brain fog. That really bothered me, the brain fog. I think like that was my big one, because I kind of love working, and I love going to work, and I love being on it, and I love being productive. And that was just like, for anyone that's had it, you know, that's really frustrating. And that, so the other thing is, annoying thing is, a lot of the symptoms that you'll then get lead to you feeling down, or, you know, so that was making me feel really frustrated and really anxious and really all of these different things. So that's what I'm saying about the symptoms then racking up on top of each other until you are just overloaded and cannot cope. And so that's kind of what was happening to women before. We can't allow that to continue. So if we can educate people earlier, they can get the help that they need earlier. But you can alleviate a lot of these symptoms or ease them with, you know, your nutrition, the working out, you know, all the things that we discussed. And also meditation. Like, don't, you know, underestimate the powers of stress meditation, sound baths, yoga, tai chi. Tai chi is amazing, by the way. And, you know, anything, whatever, or walk and talk, go for a walk and a talk. Or I ring my, you know, mother-in-law or whoever. I don't always just walk in silence and breathe in the, you know, it's fine to walk and talk and speak to your friends, like, talk about it, speak to men about it. Like, they're not as clueless as we think about it, and they're not as scared to get involved in the conversation. And I actually love a lot of their opinions on it, and it's just really interesting. And I like, a lot of the time when you bring men into the conversation, they're actually really grateful to be brought into the conversation. They're like, yeah, I'm allowed a point on this, and they're play, and it's great, and they have some great points on it. So, you know, and you know, again, it's one of those things at the House of Hormones, we like to keep things light-hearted. Like, it is scary, it is any type of change. You know, perimenopause is kind of looked upon as the second puberty, and puberty was scary. It's kind of like when there's a big change in the hormones, and so puberty is like the start of it, and then perimenopause is kind of like the next bit. And so it's scary, but it doesn't have to be if we're all in it together. It doesn't have to be if you've educated yourself. It doesn't have to be if you know the tips and tricks. And this isn't about buying the most expensive supplements out there. It just really isn't. However, there are supplements out there to help you. So if you're having problems sleeping and you need to take magnesium, cool, do it. You know, if you're having a deficiency, or if you're not able to get enough omega-3 in your diet, cool, supplement it. You know, like, find a good one. We promote plenty of good ones. And so, you know, all those types of things. And, you know, I think the thing is as well that we want to lean into a bit more, because it kind of is more the commercial side. It's what women respond to, and we want to mix that in as, like, you know, when we're talking about these things, nutrition and you know, we are talking about, like, it does help your skin and stuff too. And, you know, because women will go and spend anything on a beauty treatment or a face cream or a this or a that. And don't get me started about the toxins in products and the hormone disruptors. Do not get me started. But it's, you know, if we lean in a little bit and just let people know, but hang on, if you're being more nutritious and if you're, working out more, going for walks, like that is better for your skin. It's better for, people are talking about high cortisol and belly fat and, all this type of thing, but walking lowers your stress. So I know it doesn't like burn the most amount of calories, but by having lower stress, you've got lower cortisol. By having lower cortisol levels, it actually helps your belly fat. And so we do want to lean into these messages a bit, just because it gets through to women, and we can say, hey, we know you prioritize like looking good, and we also want you to prioritize feeling good. So, that type of thing.
Absolutely. I think it's so important. And you touched on it briefly just then about like the conversation between women and men as well, and that men really enjoy being part of the conversation and being invited in to talk about that subject. Like, how would you what would you recommend to someone that's kind of in a relationship with a man, and how could they be starting to bring up these conversations? Because I think it is really important, particularly if you're in a relationship, that they understand how you're going through it, because especially if you live together or you're with each other all the time, like they need to know about the different cycles that you're going to go through and the different moods that you're going to go through throughout that cycle. So like, how would you go about bringing up that conversation with someone?
Well, so we've actually done some cheat sheets for men. So one thing you could do is you could just print that off and like give it to them. If you don't want to have the conversation, you can print it off and give it to them. But I think those days are done. Men can handle it. We can talk about it. It's all right. I think, again, instead of talking about other people's instances, why don't we just talk about mine? I've thought a lot about the education side of it, because I'm thinking, well, hang on, how am I teaching? Because I've got a son as well. So I'm like, well, how am I going to start teaching my 5-year-old son? Like maybe in 2 years' time, when my daughter gets her period, that's going to be a good time. He'll be 7. How do we start? So I think we'll introduce that early and he'll know. So the next generation might be fine. But in this day and age, a partner who wants to talk to their partner about it, when I started speaking about this more with my husband's massively into ultra processed food, right? And he was on this whole reading books about it, and we were kind of on a big health kick at the same time. And what I did was I started talking to him about it, but kind of framed in something that he's interested in. Not because he's stupid, he's far from it, but just to kind of make him more interested in it. So to give him an interest and to give him his own voice in that. So I was like, oh, well, do you know, like, basically I'm going to eat different things at different parts of my cycle. Boom, that was it. He was like Googling it. He was like messaging me, I'm making this for dinner tonight because you're on day. And that was just because I kind of, think, well, let's see how we can frame this to make it more interesting. Because listen, let's face it, does he want another, podcast clip of how, like estrogen starts going down? No, he's probably seen enough now. Like I've probably shared enough of the statistics and the this and the that, but he definitely is interested in the food side of things and he definitely understands that more. But to open up the conversation, recommendation would be like, make them feel involved. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to come from a preachy place, and it doesn't have to come from a you don't understand, you'll never understand. I mean, we probably will still say all those things at a certain time of the month because it's true. But if you want to have like a proper conversation, allow them to come in, allow them to have an opinion, like let them in. And if you need to lead them in with like little breadcrumbs of something they're interested in or whatever that may be, cool. Your partner, like maybe with that advice you can think, oh yeah, he loves football, maybe. I don't know how you'd make that one work.
Go with football analogy.
Yeah. But I bet you could. It's just try and find something that they're interested in. And honestly, it's such like a minefield of a topic that there are so many different ways to open it up. Whether it's you might have a partner that's really interested in exercise and you could say to them, hey, look, I've got this chart and it says I shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. Like maybe your partner's trying to make you come out for a run. You can bring it up and go, sorry, I can't run. I'm on day, whatever day it is of your period. So, and they'll be like, show me that chart or, whatever it is. And so therefore you've opened up the conversation. And also I just think it's important to say, like, be open, like be kind to them too. Like, of course they don't know. Like, they haven't had a period. I wish they can. You know, those machines that now men can wear to simulate periods and they all just like crumble after a minute. It's hilarious. But we should do one of them. But yeah, I think just be kind and help educate them, but not in a patronizing way, because nobody likes that. And it's not their fault that they don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not happening to them, right? It's something. It's like you don't know what you don't know, so it's all about, again, going back. I think this whole conversation has just highlighted the need for education in so many different aspects of life
Yeah,
around this subject, and we could talk
yeah,
about this for hours, and we can go down so many
I
different
know.
rabbit holes. There's such a broad subject, but I think ultimately one thing we just all need to really remember is that as a woman, our hormones are directly linked to pretty much everything else that we do. It's linked to our mental health, it's linked to our physical health, and as you just said there, like, we should be doing different things, eating different things, different stages of our cycle, and we should be doing more to listen more intently to that and understanding it better, and ultimately then we're going to feel better for it. So thank you so much for sharing all of that and all of that knowledge with us. Hopefully we can do another episode and dig into some of the other bits that we've been speaking about.
Absolutely.
But just to summarize then, so anyone's listening to this is currently struggling with, they know they're already struggling with something to do with their hormones. Like, what would your number one bit of advice be? Like, where would you kind of recommend that they go and to seek further support?
I mean, of course, always go to your doctor. But what I would say is there is meant to be, and nobody really knows this. So within every GP practice, there is meant to be a specialist within each division. Okay. So there is meant to be a women's health specialist within your GP. So ask for that. Don't just ring and say, can I speak to a doctor? Ask for that and advocate for yourself. Okay. If you know something's wrong, trust yourself. Something's wrong, right? And if you feel it, then you can reach out. Like, you can reach out to us at the House of Hormones. You can start educating yourself. You know, the education is out there. There are amazing doctors online that you can speak to, and community. Like, I love working in this sector now, because as soon as I find, like even you today, as soon as you start talking about your own experiences, honestly, you'll be in a room with women and then everyone opens up, and it will be fascinating how many people have had the same experience. And I don't care what anyone says, but the second that a problem shared is a problem halved, and the second that you know that somebody else has been dealing with that exact same thing or something that was even worse or this, and you know, just community, and you come together, it does make you feel better, because it just doesn't make you feel like it was just you, or you know. And you got to remember, keeping these things, whether it be acne or whether it be really heavy periods or whether it be, you know, brain fog or any of these things, those things then will get you down. Okay, so it will always have an effect on your mental health. And so it's about really paying attention to that too. And I know I spoke loads about nutrition and this type of thing, but can I just do a disclaimer? Like, I am not against a bar of chocolate on the sofa, but you know, be kind to yourself. It's all about balance. And yeah, I am guilty of, you know, if I'm being really looked after my nutrition and whatever, and then it's just that couple of days before you appear, and you just can't, you know what, indulge, have it, enjoy yourself, and don't feel guilty about it. That's the important thing. But I think it's all about balance, and it's about, you know, living your happiest life and just looking after yourself. Self-care shows up in many forms and in many ways, and that's important to remember. And sometimes that is having a duvet day, and watching a Channel 5 Christmas movie and eating a dairy milk.
Yeah, absolutely. It is all about balance. And I love what you said there about advocating for yourself. Ultimately, we all have an instinct. We all know when something is wrong with us. Like, listen to it. Let's start listening more to your body, and then advocate for yourself and get the whatever it is support that you need. Do the research, and then find the way of being supported. I think that that's a really important thing that not enough of us do, because, as we say, we are uneducated in this topic. One way definitely people can start educating themselves if they want is to head over to the House of Hormones and start looking through some of your resources. Tell us a bit more about like how people can find you and what kind of things that they can get involved in with you.
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram at the House of Hormones, or head to the website on Instagram. You can find all the links anyway, but head to the website, which is www.thehouseofhormones.com. There you can find our free downloads and lots of other educational podcasts. So if you're going out walking, we've got some podcast suggestions there. There's some really, really great ones. And you can sign up for our mailer. So make sure you sign up for our mailer, actually, because I love our Sunday morning mailer. So every Sunday we'll send out a chilled kind of self-care Sunday mailer, and there'll be tips in that. And like some of the stuff you've asked me today, or is collagen important? Like, we want to know, like, do we need it? And we'll answer these things, or sleeping tips, and all these different types of things that might be of interest. And we always have like discount codes in there for if you do want to get supplements, like and we always have giveaways as well, really good giveaways. Every week a new brand will want to give away something, so we always want people to be able to try stuff. So make sure you sign up for the Sunday morning mailer.
Definitely. We'll put all the links in the episode description, so make sure you go and check that out. But thank you so much. That was so helpful and so insightful, and hopefully we can do another conversation delving into some of the other routes that we could go down talking about this subject. But yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and learning more through the House of Hormones as well.
Thank you so much. It's been so lovely to connect, and I absolutely love your community and everything you guys are doing too. So thanks for having us. So excited to do more with each other in the future.